Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes. 2 months before reporting to federal prison to serve a 3-year sentence, the man the president has called a rat for cooperating with the Justice Department came before Congress and the American people to paint what was a devastating portrait, frankly, of his former boss. In the first ever public testimony from a witness inside the president's inner circle, Michael Cohen pulled back the curtain on Trump world to reveal an operation built on lies, intimidation, and a number of potential crimes.
I am ashamed that I chose to take part in concealing Mr. Trump's illicit acts rather than listening to my own conscience. I am ashamed because I know what Mr. Trump is. He is a racist, he is a con man, and he is a cheat. And I have done bad things, but I am not a bad man. I have fixed things, but I am no longer your fixer, Mr. Trump.
It was the most damning testimony against a sitting president since, well, probably John Dean incriminated Richard Nixon. And this despite Cohen's very real credibility issues. Among other charges, he pleaded guilty to lying under oath in previous congressional testimony. Cohen acknowledged his own limitations and tried to corroborate his claims about the president.
To attack me every single time about taxes, I have no credibility. It's for exactly that reason that I spent the last week searching boxes in order to find the information that I did, so that you don't have to take my word for it. I don't want you to. I want you to look at the documents, and I want you to make your own decision.
Among the documents Cohen submitted into evidence was this, a check for $35,000 apparently signed by the president himself, dated August 1st, 2017, while the president was in office, while he was president of these United States. Cohen says it was part of his reimbursement for the hush money paid to Stormy Daniels before the election. Now, let's be clear. That hush money payment was part of a criminal scheme to which Cohen has already pleaded guilty in federal court. A scheme that may well have helped Donald Trump get elected by suppressing information. And the check from the president puts the president sitting as the president while in the White House at the center of that continued scheme while serving as a chief executive of the U.S. government. Cohen also alleged that Donald Trump Jr. and Trump Organization CFO Allen Weisselberg were involved. Besides implicating the president in a conspiracy to violate election law, Cohen accused the president of a number of other crimes, including self-dealing in his charitable foundation, bank fraud, insurance fraud, and tax evasion, fudging his ethics filings under penalty of perjury. Cohen accused the president and his lawyers of suborning perjury by effectively urging him to lie to Congress and downplay his work on a project in Moscow throughout the campaign. Cohen also claimed the president had advanced knowledge from Roger Stone of WikiLeaks' first release in the summer of 2016.
Mr. Stone told Mr. Trump that he had just gotten off the phone with Julian Assange, and that Mr. Assange told Mr. Stone that within a couple of days, there would be a massive dump of emails that would damage Hillary Clinton's campaign.
How can we corroborate what you are saying?
I don't know, but I suspect that the special counsel's office and other government agencies have the information that you're seeking.
Cohen alleged a vast range of criminal conduct by the president, and that's just the stuff he's allowed to talk about. For all we know, there may be other incidents we haven't heard about yet that are already under investigation by federal prosecutors.
When was the last communication with President Trump or someone acting on his behalf?
I don't have the specific date, but it was a while ago.
And what did he or his agent communicate to you?
Unfortunately, this topic is actually something that's being investigated right now by the Southern District of New York, and I've been asked by them not to discuss and not to talk about these issues.
Joining me now, 2 Democratic members of the House Oversight Committee who questioned Michael Cohen at today's hearing, Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland and Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz of Florida. Congresswoman, I'll begin with you. A lot of testimony. We learned a lot of things. Some things we knew and were confirmed. Some were completely new pieces of information. What was your takeaway from today, Congresswoman?
Well, my takeaway from today, Chris, was that we've got a few more hearings that we have to convene with, particularly for starters, with President Trump's daughter and son-in-law, because Mr. Cohen's response to my question today about whether or not they could have been compromised prior to the election due to their involvement and lying about the Trump Tower deal certainly created more questions than answers. And we've got two of those three people who are literally working in the White House every single day. And it's essential that we get to the bottom of the deception and the corruption that appears to have taken place.
So just make sure I'm tracking this. You're saying Don Jr., Ivanka, and Jared, you would like to see them before that committee?
I would.
Congressman Raskin, your takeaway from today?
Well, the president is a hands-on leader when it comes to his various schemes. And so he was directly involved in running the Moscow Trump Tower project. He was directly involved in writing checks and organizing checks for hush money payments that constituted illegal campaign finance contributions and expenditures. So I don't think the president's going to be able to run away from what we've learned about him. I mean, he was directly involved in all of the criminality that Mr. Cohen was discussing today, and he came off as a very powerful, effective witness precisely because he wasn't lying. He has no incentive to lie now, and he's unburdening himself after more than a decade of being involved with this web of propaganda and deceit that's the Trump campaign and the Trump presidency. So I think our Republican colleagues appeared to be frantic and unhinged at many points. And they kept talking about lying, but as I told Cohen, they weren't upset because he had lied to Congress about the president. They were upset because he stopped lying to Congress about the president, and I think that was very clear.
I want to ask you about a thing that I think is it's a strange thing because it's something that we all know and have known for a while. It was sort of reintroduced and framed today, which is that the president is, just as a matter of the public record, implicated in a criminal conspiracy to violate campaign finance law that has already resulted in a felony plea that has been sworn onto by the Southern District of New York and the judge in that case, all of whom agree that there was that there was a criminal violation of campaign finance law. And today, Michael Cohen comes out and shows a check the president wrote in August of his first year of office. Did that surprise you, Congresswoman?
It did surprise me to see the sort of stone-cold evidence that President Trump did exactly the opposite of what he said, which he lied initially and said that he had not made any payments, knew nothing about the payments as a result of that interaction. And what was even more surprising, Chris, was that those payments and those discussions happened in the Oval Office. I mean, that was stunning. That was a stunning admission that in the midst of President Trump running the country, what was he most worried about? Making sure that he reimbursed his lawyer, who he had, take a loan out on his house, cover up the deed for him, and you pay him back during this entire process, and while he's been lying about it as President of the United States. That was stunning to me.
Congressman, I want to play some testimony with Jerry Connolly, who's a colleague of yours, who I think elicited something entirely new. It was not in the plea that Michael Cohen entered into. I don't think we knew this. This is about whether how and if the president's he or his lawyers reviewed his congressional testimony. Take a listen.
So you had a conversation with the President of the United States about your impending testimony before the House Intelligence Committee. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Which specific lawyers reviewed and edited your statement to Congress on the Moscow Tower negotiations, and did they make any changes to your statement?
There were changes made, additions. Jay Sekulow, for one.
So now that's you there, Congressman Raskin. We should say that Jay Sekulow issued a denial. It's a specific denial that the testimony that they changed anything having to do with the duration of the Moscow deal is false. Mm-hmm. He says today's testimony of Michael Cohen that attorneys to the president edited or changed his statement to Congress to alter the duration of the Trump Tower Moscow negotiations is completely false. What's your reaction to Cohen's testimony about the president and his lawyers both talking to him, reviewing his testimony that we now know is false?
Well, the reason we were asking about it is because Michael Cohen is going to prison for lying to Congress about how long the president was involved in, his business negotiations for the Moscow Tower, and it was changed from apparently what was accurate, which was it went in, through most of the campaign, or at least until the summer, to January. And what we elicited from him is that the lawyers for the president, Jay Sekulow, I believe, was a personally retained lawyer, not a White House lawyer, and as well as possibly the White House lawyers reviewed and edited the testimony. So obviously, that's one of the many fruitful lines of inquiry that we need to pursue now. Was this changed by lawyers working for the president? How involved was the White House in that? And, there are a number of things like that that came up today, which are piquing our curiosity in a very strong way.
All right, Congressman Jamie Raskin and Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, thank you both. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.